Okay, let's unpack this idea of cultural mixing. You know how sometimes we think of cultures as like these separate, pure things?
Right, as if they're static.
Exactly. But the reality, especially after big events like colonialism, is that they're constantly blending, borrowing, changing each other.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how this idea challenges those neat boundaries we imagine. It kind of upends our assumptions.
Totally. So today, we're doing a deep dive into post-colonial hybridity. It sounds academic, maybe, but it's fundamental.
It really is. It helps understand how cultures, identities,
Yeah.
how they actually evolve.
Yeah.
Ah,
We're working from a source that digs into this, focusing quite a bit on Homi K. Bhabha's work.
a key figure here, definitely.
And our mission, really, is to get what hybridity means, why it matters for understanding the culture you see around you, and, what older ideas it pushes back against.
hmm And this concept, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It came from looking closely at how cultures interacted and often clashed, right, in colonial situations and after.
You're right.
Paba, especially in the location of culture, argues these encounters weren't just, say, the colonizer imposing things. It was more dynamic, a negotiation.
So wait, it wasn't just a one-way street. The colonized culture wasn't just sitting there passively. Both sides were changed.
Precisely. The interaction itself generates something new. Pabha actually calls this a third space.
Ah, the third space. Okay, it sounds sort of in between, like a liminal zone. What's the significance there?
Well, it's this conceptual space, right? Where the old fixed meanings of culture start to loosen their grip. It's ambiguous, it's fluid,
Right.
and it's where new meanings get forged through that mixing, that negotiation we talked about. And crucially, it destabilizes both colonial authority and any simple idea of a pure cultural identity or resistance.
So it's not just A plus B equals AB. It's like
Yeah.
a new thing emerges, a C.
Exactly. It's genuinely transformative, a new sea that emerges from that tension.
And you mentioned negotiation. Papa talks about mimicry is one way this happens.
What? Yes, mimicry. So you might see colonized people adopting the colonizers' language, their customs, maybe institutions, but, and this is the absolute key,
Okay.
it's never a perfect copy. It's almost the same, but not quite.
Almost the same, but not quite. That phrase really lands. So it's not simple imitation then. It's more complicated.
Absolutely, not just imitation, that not quite bit.
Yeah.
That's where the power dynamic gets interesting. It's not just a failure to copy perfectly.
Okay.
It's a kind of performance that actually ends up highlighting how arbitrary the colonizers' norms are. It creates this ambivalence, this space for redefinition, maybe even a subtle critique from within the system.
Huh. So the colonizer feels that too, that tension.
Oh, definitely. They want replication, maybe, but they also fear being, well, changed or maybe subtly mocked by these hybrid forms that mimicry produces.
Okay, wow. So it's this really complex dance of influence, even when the power is totally unequal. Can you give an example? Make it more concrete?
Sure, think about language itself. Writers like, say, Salman Rushdie, writing in English, right?
Yeah.
But they don't just use standard English. They twist it, infuse it with rhythms, words, ways of storytelling from, in his case, India. The language becomes something else.
Something hybrid.
Exactly. It's English, but it's not quite the Queen's English. It belongs fully neither here nor there. It's been transformed.
Or like fusion cuisine.
Yeah,
Taking elements from different traditions to make something totally new that isn't strictly one or the other.
that's a great everyday example. Or think about music genres, how hip-hop blends with traditional folk sounds from all over the globe.
Yeah, you see that everywhere.
It shows hybridity isn't just some historical thing tied only to colonialism. It's ongoing. It's happening right now, all around us, in fashion, art, how we celebrate things.
Right. Okay, so pulling back a bit, what are the big takeaways here? Why is thinking about culture this way important? What does it change for us?
Well, fundamentally, it just blows up any idea of cultural purity or fixed identities. It shows culture is always a process, always being negotiated, always evolving.
Right.
And it also shows that resistance, maybe to power, isn't always about outright fighting. It can be subtle, happening through adapting, redefining things from within.
Making it your own, in a way.
Kind of, yeah. And it really underscores that identities, particularly in our post-colonial world, are fluid. They're formed through negotiating all these different influences hitting us.
Now, the source material does acknowledge critiques, right? Some worry focusing on mixing, I don't know, maybe downplay the really harsh stuff, power imbalances, violence, economic inequality that still linger.
That's a really important point. And yes, a valid critique. Some worry can sound too celebratory, maybe too abstract, and potentially minimize those very real, enduring structures of oppression.
Right.
But, even acknowledging those concerns, the concept of hybridity itself, it remains incredibly useful. Powerful even for understanding just how dynamic and, frankly, messy culture and identity really are.
Absolutely. So, okay, wrapping up this deep dive. Postcolonial hybridity tells us culture, identity, they aren't pure, they aren't static.
Not at all. They're constantly being mixed, negotiated, remade, often in that challenging, vibrant third space.
And understanding this is pretty essential for making sense of the complex cultural world you see all around you today.
It helps explain so much, yeah.
It really does make you turn the lens back on yourself, though, doesn't it? When you stop and think about your own identity, the languages maybe you or your family use, the food you eat, music, values. How many different cultural streams have flowed into who you are?
Yeah.
Doesn't that make your own identity inherently hybrid? Always kind of shifting, being negotiated. What parts of your identity are maybe almost the same, but not quite like their origins? Something to think about.